Tonight on UI7 News, early voting for the Illinois primary is underway on campus.
Also, some students hope for an increase in state funding so their tuition can be more affordable.
And there's talk of Illinois lawmakers including the legalization of marijuana on the ballot for the general election. UI7 News starts now.
From the Richmond Journalism Teaching Studio at the University of Illinois campus, UI7 News, your U of I news source.
Good evening and welcome to UI7 News. I'm Olivia Schmidt.
And I'm Stella Yu.
The Illinois primary election is less than a week away, and tonight UI7 News will tell you what you need to know to be an informed voter.
We've got coverage for you on what issues are being discussed in this election.
We'll bring you insight into the most important issues of this election from expert political sources from across the state. Let's begin with the latest.
Funding for higher education is an important issue in this election. Higher education funding can influence tuition rates, fees, and employment at colleges and universities.
UI7's Carmen Casillo explains how lawmakers can impact the cost of attending college and how students feel about it.
There's no doubt that attending a school like the University of Illinois is expensive. If funding for higher education goes down, tuition is likely to go up.
For me, I think that it was hard enough for me to work full-time and be a full-time student because I wasn't able to afford college.
Jose Ura is not the only student having trouble funding his dreams. A lack of state funding is causing the university tuition to spike. Legislators will need to pass a new budget for the 2019 fiscal year.
The budget coming up for this next year is, in principle, going to force politicians to make very difficult decisions.
Many politicians recognize the need to fund higher education. However, this funding is always at a risk of getting cut. The university's total budget for the 2018 fiscal year is $2.18 billion. 10% of that budget comes from state funding. According to the University of Illinois budget book, the university's budget has dropped by approximately 2.4%. This is a result of declining tax appropriations for higher education. When state funding decreases, the university has to find other ways to bring in revenue.
The University of Illinois is going to have to operate like most private universities.
Students will then need to pay more to attend college.
If you raised the tuition on me specifically, I would have probably said I don't want to go to school because I cannot simply afford it.
Tuition is more than $16,000 for an Illinois resident, and that doesn't include room and board. For UI7 News, I'm Carmen Castillo.
Tuition at the University of Illinois is more than $30,000 a year for a non-state resident.
Candidates running for governor in Illinois are taking a stance on funding higher education. The state of Illinois went over 2 years without a budget in place. This hasn't happened in Illinois in 200 years. Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frerick says the future for funding higher education depends on who voters elect as governor.
To invest money for the state of Illinois, but we also want to help people invest in themselves.
The budget is how we fund education. It's how we fund public higher education. But for the last 2 years without a budget, we've had incredible cuts and pain forced on higher education in the state of Illinois. And what that means is reduced services or increased tuition. And so this is something that affects every student in the state.
Illinois State Treasurer Michael Frerick says that when considering which gubernatorial candidate will be able to pass a budget, it's important to consider and hold them accountable for their past promises.
Any governor coming in is going to have real challenges making revenues match up with expenses. So you really have to find out what the governor's priorities are. And I want someone who knows that an investment in higher education is an investment in the long-term success of the state.
Democratic candidate J.B. Pritzker believes a progressive income tax would help fund higher education, while Robert Marshall wants to break up Illinois into 3 separate states to better balance revenue. Daniel Biss and Tio Hardiman both believe higher education should be free to college students. Chris Kennedy wants to add $1 billion to the university's budget. Bob Daber also thinks a progressive income tax will increase higher education funding. Jeannie Ives is running against incumbent Governor Bruce Rauner for the Republican ticket. She is pushing to cut university administrators.
It's the responsibility of the General Assembly and the governor to pass budgets every year. And then it's the responsibility of the governor to live within those means and to manage those budgets. I'm the state's chief investment officer, and I make a lot of investments, and I think there's no greater investment we can make than an investment in higher education.
Some University of Illinois students are voting early on campus before the actual election date of March 20th. This falls on the university's spring break.
Thanks for coming to vote early.
Students on the U of I campus are shuffling into the polling place to cast their ballots. Early voting for primary elections is still ongoing. Election official Scott Dossett says it's important for students to take initiative and vote.
But the more you vote, the more you learn about the local politics in your community, and so voting is actually kind of a self-supporting kind of activity.
Student Soren Warland says she has been voting for the last 4 years. She says voter turnout could be better.
Well, I just think that various organizations on campus should really work harder to get the vote out about how important voting in both primaries and general elections is.
Early voting for the primary elections started yesterday morning at the Illini Union. Students can follow these simple steps to vote.
However, sophomore Trenton Wheeler says he thinks the process of voting should be easier and more accessible.
I'm sure other students do, but I would say probably there's a good amount that don't. I don't think.
Another student voter, Sergei Papushin, says all student votes count regardless of the outcome.
I think you should just express your views because that's your duty as a citizen, and it's just important to do that. Even if you feel like you might not personally make a change, your vote is worth just as much as someone's vote in the country.
Overall, the voter turnout is looking pretty active as students continue to cast their votes. In Champaign, I'm Jian Kim, UI7 News.
We talked to students about what issues are driving them to the polls this election.
One of the issues for me is we need to allow people who are outsiders to serve in our office, because we can't continue electing people who are kind of placed in office by a machine. We need ordinary people, smart people, we need educators, we need scientists, we need young people, we need old people, and we need people of every different race, creed, and class.
Obviously, as a student, I really care about affordable education. And I also really care about picking Democrats who can win and take on their Republican challengers.
So the most important issues for me, my top issue is getting money out of politics. I think that we live in a corrupt political system.
Although students say they're encouraging their peers to participate in early voting, Champaign County Clerk Gordy Holton says many students actually end up voting in their home districts.
There are very many students who spend 4 years here but want to vote at home. They have a connection to home and they want to vote in their districts at home. And as a result of that, campus looks like it has sometimes very low turnout rates. But that's because if I vote in Madison County or if you vote in DuPage County, you're never going to show up in Champaign County's numbers.
He also said that campus has an interesting effect on voting in the 13th district. This district has elected a Republican as a representative in Congress for the past 18 years, but students on campus tend to vote more Democratic.
If you take campus out of the 13th gets more Republican, but it's already Republican.
Students and faculty also have their concerns with the upcoming gubernatorial race. UI7's Caroline Hidman took a look at what issues are important campus-wide.
On March 20th, citizens across Illinois will vote in the Democratic and Republican primary election. The outcome of the gubernatorial race will have an impact on a range of issues across the state and on the University of Illinois. Student trustee Trayshawn Mitchell explained what issues matter most to students.
At least in this past year, the governor selected a student who has a student vote. And the governor is a very intricate part of how our university operates, not only here, but also in Chicago and Springfield.
As a student representative on the Board of Trustees, Trayshawn explains why funding is necessary for the U of I campus.
And, some things get cut and some things you just can't fund. But when you're not having education properly funded, it really hurts us as students. So I think you should really want to look at somebody who values the college student and values what we can bring into the economy. Because
Political science professor Scott Alhouse also expressed why the upcoming election matters for the university.
And right now we have an interesting mix of competing agendas that have given us
a great deal of political deadlock in trying to solve these structural problems that affect the budgeting for the university, but also a wide range of other things. So it's important to look not only at the top of the ticket and who's running for governor, but all the way down and who's going to be staffing those legislative seats where the true power is really going to be exercised when it comes to the state budget.
Outside the quad today, students and faculty are campaigning for their respective parties, encouraging students to vote on important matters. Student Justin Bozo says students should vote in this primary to ensure funding for the university is a priority for legislators.
The issue is funding and just the way that specific candidates kind of recognize how our funding is allocated and just the whole state budget is just a really big problem right now.
Register and vote at the union today.
In Urbana, I'm Caroline Hinman, UI7 News.
Stay tuned for a live interview with local political expert Patrick Finston when we come back.
And coverage on why some Illinois lawmakers are working to legalize the use of marijuana in the state.
What to expect when you're expecting a teenager.
Hey guys, today we're talking about how to wake up your teen, and this works literally every time.
Give kisses. Give kisses. Look. Give kisses. Give kisses. You heard how loud that was.
I know,
sleep through that.
I heard. It wasn't you.
Yeah.
It was the...
Is that bacon?
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Bacon.
Families come in all sizes and shapes. Sometimes your friends are your family by choice, or sometimes you're just stuck with Uncle Charles. But what we know is that you want to protect the people that are close to you. But the flu can unravel everything. Your flu vaccine protects you and your family. No matter what draws your family together, protect yourself, protect your family. Everyone needs a flu vaccine.
Good morning, Illini.
Hey, good morning, Illini, and selamat pagi.
Good morning, Illini.
Welcome back to your in-depth coverage of the Illinois primary election.
We have a local political expert here with us today, Patrick Finston, to talk about the importance of both the primary and local elections. Thank you for joining us today, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
To start off, what do you think people should know about the governor's race?
Well, this is a huge deal for the entire state. As you well know, the state budget is a nightmare. You've got all sorts of problems in Springfield with people getting along, speaking to each other, much less getting anything done. And in the election sense, you have a couple of billionaires against 4 other people. And that's, so it's really made it a David versus Goliath kind of race on both sides. Bruce Rauner, of course, has unlimited funds. He's been outspending his far-right opponent, Jeannie Ives, probably 30-1 at this point. And J.B. Pritzker, who's a billionaire from the Hyatt Hotel family, has been self-funding his campaign to the tune of $7 million a pop. He's put over $60 million of his own money into the race, hasn't raised a dime from anyone else, and is way outspending his opponents. So it's a matter of if anyone else's message can cut through all the money that the other guys are spending.
So we're here on the University of Illinois campus, and what do you think voters should know about the congressional races?
Well, so Rodney Davis is the incumbent. He's a Republican. Full disclosure, I worked for him in 2012. He's been a guy who has tried to be as moderate as possible, but this is a really weird district, the 13th, which stretches from here in Champaign-Urbana all the way over to Bloomington-Normal, down to Springfield, and all the way to St. Louis. So you have some urban areas like here and on campus and in Bloomington Normal where ISU is in the district, but then you also have some really conservative rural areas. So he has a really tough job in representing a district that is liberal in campus in Champaign-Urbana here and really super conservative in some of the rural counties. On the Democrat side, you have 6 or 7 candidates running, none of whom have raised a lot of money, none of whom seem to have the support of the national Democrats, who they'll need that money to win in November. So it's really going to be a crapshoot to see who puts together enough of a coalition to be able to win in all of the counties that make up the 13th.
And building on that, we're turning to local elections. Obviously, they're very important because they impact our daily lives. What kind of races should we pay attention to here in Central Illinois?
Well, obviously, there are state Senate races, state representative races, but then there are county and local races as well. And here in Champaign County, where students will be voting, you have races for Champaign County clerk and Champaign County treasurer and auditor. And these are important races for tax dollars. And if a student here who thinks, oh, well, I don't care about where my tax payments go for real estate, you may not now, but if you plan to stay here, and thousands of students every year stay here, you're going to have to deal with these things every day, from birth certificates and death certificates and election management and who's taking your property tax payments. These jobs have a huge impact on your daily life.
Definitely. And now to wrap it up, why is voting in the primary election so important?
You know, people think primaries don't matter because it's just a political process. But especially here for students and young people in this area, and Champaign-Urbana has a very young, diverse population, we're seeing now, and you can see with the young people in the Parkland High School aftermath, you're seeing young people have a voice that they've never had before. We've been talking about how to get people under 30 to the polls for a decade or longer. Now maybe there's motivation. And if young people come out and they vote, they set the agenda for whatever party they belong to, Republican, Democrat, etc. And then they can start to make real change, however they see in November.
Thank you so much, Patrick. We'll see how all of this plays out.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Many in the Champaign-Urbana community say one way to increase revenue for the state is to legalize marijuana. UI7's Lena Marie has more.
Medical marijuana dispensaries are currently the only legalized distributors of marijuana within Illinois. The Illinois legislature is taking steps to put the legalization of recreational marijuana on the ballot in the general election. This would essentially mean that marijuana would no longer be a criminal offense. An indirect result could be less money pumped into our criminal justice system, but this all depends on who is elected into office.
I do think it would have a tremendous impact on the people who have felony convictions or misdemeanor convictions, and would create job opportunities for those individuals.
Beyond saving money in the justice system, representatives say that state revenue will increase drastically if legalized.
The consensus is these days is that the benefits are going to outweigh the costs.
Legislators are pushing to get the legalization of marijuana on the ballot in November.
The city of Chicago decriminalized recreational marijuana in 2014. Those caught with marijuana are now fined rather than arrested. This act not only reduced crime, but brought more revenue to the city through the fines.
Legalization and taxation means that we provide another source of revenue. So the economic impact of legalizing recreational marijuana and taxing it is totally positive.
If you qualify, you can get access to medical cannabis. And I think the legalization, outright legalization, regulation and control would immediately mean revenue for the state.
If legalized, the state could bring in revenue from taxing marijuana.
If marijuana were legalized, taxed, there would be people who would be licensed to sell it. And some of that revenue would come to the city of Urbana.
In Urbana, I'm Lena Marie, UI7 News.
We'll be back after the break.
We are packing and getting ready for a well-deserved spring break.
Before we start relaxing, we have one more show.
If you aren't going anywhere this spring break, no worries. We have the perfect staycation plan.
Plus, we get a behind-the-scenes look at Illinois Student Musical's production of Heathers.
And we will introduce you to another amazing U of I student in this week's Who Am I?
That and more this Friday on Good Morning Illini.
Don't forget to watch us live on YouTube at 9 a.m.
Listen, I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you judge me for having a problem. No one is going to know that I need help. I need help. I know that no one is going to judge me for having a problem. I realize that I'm not perfect, but it all really started to change because you listen.
Joining us in the studio is UI7's.
He with a sore throat, he was a little.
Today in Champaign, the sun is finally out with around 40 degrees, a nice break from what we've been experiencing earlier this week. Let's take a look at the local temperatures. In Champaign, a high of 37, Rantoul a high of 39, and Danville 36. Again, all kind of staying around the same range, mid to high 30s, with Springfield coming in at 40. Let's take a look at the Midwest temperatures. Again, Chicago, CU, and Indianapolis are experiencing mid to high 30s, while in Des Moines and Kansas City, they're experiencing 51 and 52. Hopefully those nice temperatures will get towards us in the near future. Taking a broader look at the national temperatures, Minneapolis, Atlanta, and Dallas, coming in at 60, Atlanta at 45, Minneapolis 41. You spring breakers down in Miami are experiencing some nice weather with a high of 70, and those at 77 in Phoenix. Tonight in Champaign, high of 46 with clear skies, west-southwest winds of 41 miles an hour. And tomorrow, it's sunny, high of 49, north-northwest winds at 7 miles an hour. And the 5-day forecast, again, tomorrow will be sunny, a high of 49, but unfortunately it's not here to stay. Friday and Saturday, the rain will be trickling in, with Friday a high of 41, Saturday high of 51, and Sunday a high of 55. Finally, those west winds have finally hit us, with bringing us some nice temperatures.
Thanks for having me this weekend. Champaign will be seeing warmer temperatures along with rain, thankfully just in time for us to head out to spring break.
Thankfully, I don't want that rain.
We're here with Cristiano in the studio for sports.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Thanks, Olivia. Caroline, glad to be here, guys. Coming up on sports, we'll talk about Illini hockey's run of the national championship game this past week in Columbus, Ohio, plus more on how this year's club can spark interest in hockey becoming a varsity sport on campus.
Don't ignore the subtext. It's on us to intervene in sexual assault. Because we can. Take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
There. Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Why did the girl ask the mushroom to dance? Because he was a fun guy.
What do you call a pig that knows karate? Pork chop. Why was the basketball court all wet? Why? Because the players kept dribbling all over it. Can I tell you another one? So how does a tissue dance? Put a little boogie on it.
What's Beethoven's favorite fruit? Banana.
What is a boxer's favorite drink? Fruit punch.
With the Illini men's Division I club hockey team looking to win their third league title in school history, they traveled to Columbus, Ohio for the 2018 ACHA National Championships last Friday. Illinois came into the tournament ranked 5th in the country, their highest seed placement in almost a decade. On Saturday, they opened up the postseason against the number 15 University of Jamestown Jimmies, a team that had beaten Illinois twice in the regular season. The Illini jumped off to an early lead 45 seconds into the first period thanks to a goal scored by senior forward Grant Stuve. Jamestown's Jeremy McNeil tied the game in the second period with a beautiful breakaway move that fooled Illini senior netminder David Heflin. The game remained tightly contested and hard-hitting throughout the third period, but it would be the seniors once again who would step up for the Fighting Illini. During a Jimmy's power play, Eric Cruikshank chipped the puck to himself around a Jamestown defenseman, leading to a shorthanded breakaway. The fourth-year player went with his patented move, scoring low blocker on Jimmy's goalie Tyson Brower. It was the first goal for the Burlington, Ontario native in 14 games. Illinois would double their lead later in the third period with another shorthanded goal, this time coming from senior James McGing. Illinois advanced to the quarterfinals with the 3-1 victory. The Illini's next game on Sunday came against a familiar foe, the number 4 Ohio University Bobcats. The two CSCHL rivals faced off for the 6th time this season last Sunday and exchanged 2 goals each in the opening frame. Freshman forward Drew Richter scored on a 2-on-1 chance, while sophomore winger Stephen Quinn tapped a rebound home past Bobcats goalie Jimmy Thomas. Ohio captain Jake Fiala would tie the game before the period concluded. A little over 7 minutes into the third, Quinn showed off his playoff heroics again by whacking the puck past Thomas at the side of the goal for his second of the game. Quinn had only 3 goals in the regular season. Tyler Harkins tied up the game late for Ohio, forcing sudden death overtime between the two clubs. After Ohio took an offensive zone penalty during a 4-on-4, Illinois had an extended 4-on-3 advantage. It was sophomore Luke Forfar's opportunity to shine as he drove to the net and fired a shot over the left shoulder of Thomas, securing a spot in the semifinals for the Illini and knocking the hometown Bobcats out of the tournament. Heflin made a career-high 56 saves in the win. Their next opponent was none other than the number 1 ranked Minot State Beavers on Monday afternoon. Just like the game against Ohio, Illinois scored 2 goals in the first set of 20 minutes, as did the Beavers. Junior David Kellner and freshman Joe Nolan both scored on the power play. Freshman Thomas Kolaz broke the deadlock in the middle period, beating Beavers goaltender Holden Kurtz short side for his first career playoff goal. The Illini would take that 1-goal lead into the third, relying time and again on David Heflin, who made 18 saves in the period. James McGing added an empty net goal in the final minute of regulation, helping send Illinois to their first national championship appearance since 2009. With the Murdoch Cup on the line, Illinois faced off against the number 2 seed, the Adrian College Bulldogs. Several members of the Illini were battling injuries at this point in the tournament, including junior defenseman Jack Graham, Forfar, Nolan, Heflin, and more. The Bulldogs had multiple days of rest during the tournament, but it was the 4th game in 4 days for Illinois. Adrian controlled the game from the opening puck drop, scoring twice in the first period. Kellner scored in the second, but the Bulldogs continued to hammer the Illini off the rush, capitalizing on their fatigue. Adrian would go on to win their first ACHA championship in program history, but it was still an outstanding run from Illinois, who put club hockey back on the map in Champaign. It was a great season for Illini hockey in 2017-18, there's no question. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the domino needed for NCAA hockey to come to Champaign in the near future.
Thanks, Cristiano. And you know, it's nice to know there's at least one good sport that's here.
Yeah, basketball and football, you got to really raise your A game.
Well, spring break's coming up next week. I don't know what you guys are doing, but
it is.
I can't wait. It's so needed after this week, this long week.
I know. I'm heading down to Miami, so I'm really excited for the warm temperatures, really warm temperatures. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, that's all we have for you tonight on UI7 News.
Thanks for joining us. For more of our stories, please follow us on Facebook and Twitter or subscribe to our YouTube page. We'll be back the week after next Wednesday with another edition of UI7 News.
Hope everyone has a great spring break next week. Good night.